blood rituals on red carpets, a drug said to be harvested from terrified children, celebrities who confess to drinking blood and call it symbolic, elite parties where the table centerpieces are sculpted human heads, a chemical compound that powerful men will apparently do anything to obtain, and faces famous, photographed, globally recognized faces that simply refuse to age. Hollywood has been showing you this for decades. In the films, in the music videos, in the symbols placed in plain sight by people who know exactly what they mean. Tonight, we look at all of it. In 2014, scientists at Stanford sewed two mice together, not metaphorically, literally. They sutured an old mouse and a young mouse at the skin, allowing their circulatory systems to merge their blood to flow between them. What happened next was published in peer-reviewed journals and quietly made its way to the most powerful zip codes in the world. The old mouse got younger, muscle tissue regenerated, brain function improved. The markers of aging, the ones scientists had spent decades trying to reverse, began retreating. The researchers called it parabiosis. They were careful with their language. They said suggests. They said warrants further study. But the people who read those papers and acted on them were not careful with anything. Peter Thiel, PayPal co-founder, early Facebook investor, one of the most powerful men in Silicon Valley, reportedly became fascinated by the research. A startup called Ambrosia launched a clinical trial in Monterey, California. The procedure: a transfusion of blood plasma from donors under 25. The price: $8,000. The clientele: wealthy, private, and not interested in publicity. The FDA eventually shut the clinic down. Thiel went on record to deny ever using the treatment. His exact words at the New York Times Dealbook conference were, "I'm not a vampire," which is, you'll notice, a very specific thing to deny. Now look at these photographs. Keanu Reeves. Point Break, 1991. John Wick 4, 2023. 32 years. The same face. Not preserved, not maintained. The same. Pharrell Williams, who told interviewers calmly, without irony, that he simply does not age. Paul McCartney playing 3-hour concert sets at 82. Nicolas Cage, whose face matches an 1860s Civil War photograph of an unidentified man so precisely that the image went viral and has never been explained. Leonardo DiCaprio, whose apparent double appeared in a 1960s American yearbook, a woman named Judy Zipper smiling at a camera 60 years before DiCaprio was famous, wearing his face. Conspiracy theorists have tracked Keanu Reeves further back than that, much further. One viral post traced his likeness to Charlemagne, founder of the Holy Roman Empire, 742 AD. Reeves, when asked about the immortality theories, examined the historical portraits presented to him and said he could see the resemblance in the eyes, the nose, the cheekbones, the forehead. Then he said nothing else. There is a version of this where it's all coincidence. Genetics, good lighting, expensive doctors, and better sleep than the rest of us get. That version is probably correct. But here is what's also true. Every culture in recorded human history without exception has believed that blood carries life, that youth can be transferred, that immortality exists and has a cost, and that the people wealthy enough to pay it have always found a way to do so. The ancient Romans practiced it. The Aztecs built empires around it. A 16th century Hungarian countess killed hundreds of young women for it. And in 2018 in Monterey, California, a legal American business charged $8,000 a session for it until the government decided they'd seen enough. The belief didn't start in a conspiracy forum. It started in human biology, in the real, documented, peer-reviewed fact that young blood does something to old bodies that science is still struggling to fully explain. What the theorists add to that fact is a question. What are the people with unlimited money and total privacy doing with that information? What happens at the parties nobody photographs? What does it mean that the most powerful image-making machine in human history, Hollywood, has returned again and again across 100 years of film to the same image? Blood, youth, the deal that cannot be spoken. We're going to look at the evidence, the confessions, the rituals they performed in public, on red carpets and in music videos and on gallery walls, and called art. You can decide what to call it. The easiest thing to do with what you're about to hear is laugh. That's what most people did. The tabloids ran the quotes, the Twitter accounts screenshotted them, the talk show hosts raised their eyebrows and moved on. Because if you laugh at it, you don't have to think about it. And thinking about it leads somewhere uncomfortable. So let's not laugh. Let's just look at what they actually said. In 2022, Megan Fox described her relationship with Machine Gun Kelly in terms that most publicists would have quietly buried. She spoke of drinking his blood, connected to moon cycles, to ritual intention setting, to a deliberate practice rather than an impulsive moment. She called it a small amount. She called it for ritual purposes. She was not embarrassed. The media called it eccentric, called it a PR stunt. Nobody asked the follow-up question, where did she learn that framework? Blood ritual tied to lunar cycles isn't something you invent over breakfast. It has a lineage. It runs through Aleister Crowley's Thelema, through Victorian ceremonial magic lodges, through traditions that predate Hollywood by centuries. You don't arrive at that language by accident. Someone teaches it to you, or something pulls you toward it. The question isn't whether it was symbolic. The question is what the symbol means, and who else in her world is using it. Angelina Jolie. She and Billy Bob Thornton wore vials of each other's blood around their necks, to the Golden Globes, to film premieres. Publicly, deliberately, repeatedly. Thornton later tried to walk it back, told Rolling Stone it was a small romantic gesture that the press transformed into something grotesque. Maybe. But Antonio Banderas, their co-star, saw the vials on the red carpet and described them as pretty scary. He used the words Catholic ritual. There's a difference between a private gesture and wearing blood to award ceremonies. One is intimacy. The other is display. The other is saying, look at this, we want you to see this. Then there's the footage. A video from the late 1990s. Its origins disputed. Its authenticity never definitively confirmed or denied. In which a young Jolie appears to describe participating in some kind of ceremonial experience. The footage is vague. She has never directly addressed it. It circulates constantly. Jared Leto doesn't make confessions. He doesn't need to. The people around him do. Former members of his inner circle, his band, his creative community, the group that seems sometimes like a cult, have given interviews describing rituals, hierarchies, and an atmosphere where the boundaries between performance and belief were never clear. Leto himself exists in the space between character and person, so completely that it becomes impossible to locate where one ends. He sent his Suicide Squad co-stars used condoms and dead animals as gifts. In character, he said, there are conspiracy accounts that place him at elite gatherings where blood symbolism is featured prominently. Lil Nas X. In 2021, he released 666 pairs of customized shoes. Inside each sole, a drop of real human blood. The Bible verse printed on them, Luke 10:18, described Satan falling from heaven. The music video released alongside them showed him descending to hell, performing for the devil, and taking the throne. He said it was art. He said it was commentary. He said it was provocation aimed at a culture that had rejected him. But notice what he did. He put real blood into a product and sold it. 666 times to people who wanted it, who competed for it, who paid for the privilege of owning something that contained blood connected to a satanic narrative. Here is the pattern across every single one of these cases. They provide the material themselves. The quote, the vial, the shoe, the video. Nobody is breaking into their homes and finding this. They are handing it forward publicly and then watching what the audience does with it. Either these are people who are spectacularly bad at keeping secrets, or they are people who have decided they don't need to. Every conspiracy needs substance. That substance has a name. And before we go any further, the official position is clear. Scientists say it's unremarkable. Researchers say it's commercially available. The medical community says the claims around it are baseless, debunked, and dangerous. That's the official position. But here's the conspiracy. Adrenochrome is real. That part isn't disputed. It is a chemical compound produced by the oxidation of adrenaline, a byproduct of the body's own stress hormone. It exists. It has been studied. In the 1950s and 1960s, researchers reported that adrenochrome triggered psychotic reactions, thought disorder, derealization, leading some scientists to theorize it played a role in schizophrenia. That research was later disputed. The scientific consensus moved on, but the story didn't. In 1971, Hunter S. Thompson wrote adrenochrome into Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, a character describing it as something with only one source, the adrenaline glands of a living human body, useless if extracted from a corpse. The film's director later said in DVD commentary that the drug as depicted was entirely fictional. But was he being honest? Or was he afraid for his safety? What grew from it? In forums, in leaked accounts, in the testimony of people who claim to have been inside rooms where this was discussed, is this, that adrenochrome harvested from a living human being, specifically a child in a state of extreme fear, produces a compound so potent it functions simultaneously as a psychedelic, an anti-aging serum, and a key to something older and darker than either. That the elite don't just want it, that they need it. That without it, the carefully maintained faces, the ones that don't change across decades, would begin to show what's underneath. QAnon researchers describe adrenochrome as a drug that the elites love, extracted from the pituitary gland of tortured children, sold on the black market, beyond evil, demonic. These are not anonymous forum posts. These are named individuals, on video, speaking with the certainty of people who believe they have seen evidence. The theory holds that Hollywood Boulevard functions as an adrenochrome shrine, that the red carpet at industry events symbolizes the blood of children, that the missing children statistics cited by conspiracy communities represent not random tragedy but systematic harvest, that the tunnels beneath certain cities, certain studios serve a purpose that has never been officially acknowledged. One theory circulated extensively claimed that the Hollywood elite's adrenochrome supply was deliberately tainted with coronavirus, which is why in early 2020 so many prominent celebrities announced positive tests within days of each other. Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson, Idris Elba. The timing to the conspiracy community was not coincidence. It was evidence of a shared supply chain suddenly compromised. The names attached to the theory read like a Hollywood directory: Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, Lady Gaga, specifically her documented friendship and collaboration with Marina Abramovich, whose spirit cooking rituals are cited as the public-facing layer of something far less visible. A Facebook post from 2020 accused Gaga of participating in vile, sickening rituals pertaining to adrenochrome and spirit cooking. The conspiracy doesn't claim adrenochrome is a modern invention. It claims it is an ancient practice wearing a modern name. The fear harvesting of children, the extraction of something vital from a young body pushed to the edge of terror, is described in conspiracy accounts as the hidden constant beneath every blood ritual tradition across history. That what Elizabeth Bathory, the bloodthirsty countess, was doing in her castle wasn't primitive superstition. We'll talk more about her soon. She understood something real, and that the understanding was passed forward through specific bloodlines, through specific secret societies, through the occult lodges that connected Victorian England to modern Hollywood, until it arrived here, until it arrived at the parties nobody photographs, and the clinics that charge $8,000 for plasma, and the faces that simply refuse to change. Conspiracy theorists point to Monsters, Inc., the Pixar film in which monsters harvest the screams of frightened children to power their world, as Hollywood telling on itself. A studio-produced film in which the entire economy runs on the extracted terror of children who don't know what's happening to them. Released in 2001. Watched by millions of people who called it adorable. Maybe it is adorable. Maybe it's just a children's film. Or maybe, as the theorists say, the most powerful people in the world have always hidden what they believe in plain sight. In the art, in the films, in the stories they tell children at bedtime. This is where the conspiracy reaches its darkest point, and where it must be handled with care, because the claims are severe. A video referred to in conspiracy communities as Frazzle Drip was said to exist on the dark web, depicting Hillary Clinton and her aide Huma Abedin committing a ritual murder of a child to harvest adrenochrome. Law enforcement agencies have said that they found no such video. It was never produced. It never materialized. I don't know if there really was a video like that. But in the recently released Epstein files, I am astonished to see all the talk about pizza, jerky, cakes, and other food items by the elites that seem like a code for something dark. Now science says adrenochrome is commercially synthesized, freely available, and unremarkable. The conspiracy says that's exactly what they would tell you. Here is something that gets overlooked in every conversation about Hollywood and occult symbolism. They're not hiding it. They never were. It's in the films. It's in the music videos. It's on the red carpets and the gallery walls and the party photographs. The argument isn't that they've concealed something. The argument is that they've shown you everything, repeatedly in plain sight, and the showing of it is itself the ritual. Let's look at what's actually there. The films. Rosemary's Baby, 1968. Roman Polanski directs a film about a young woman whose body is used by a satanic elite. Wealthy, powerful, socially respectable people who have made an arrangement with a darkness she cannot see or name. The film was shot in the Dakota Building in New York. 12 years later, John Lennon was murdered in the entrance of the Dakota Building. The year after the film's release, the Manson murders happened at Polanski's own home. Anton LaVey, high priest of the Church of Satan, was rumored to have advised on the production and to have appeared as the devil in the film's pivotal scene. That claim has never been confirmed. It has never been fully extinguished either. Eyes Wide Shut, 1999, Kubrick's final film. An elite gathering, masked, robed, choreographed, performing something that exists in the space between ritual and orgy. Kubrick died before the film's final cut was locked. After demanding changes, the studio resisted. The version released is not the version he finished. What was removed has never been fully disclosed. The film's production designer said on record that Kubrick told him the party depicted was based on something real. The Neon Demon, 2016. Studio-backed, screened at Cannes. Discussed seriously by critics as a work of art. A film in which Hollywood's beauty elite literally consume a young woman's blood to absorb her youth. The director said it was about Hollywood. Nobody argued with him. The music. Lady Gaga's early videos, Paparazzi, Bad Romance, are dense with Masonic imagery, death and resurrection narratives, blood symbolism constructed with a precision that goes well past aesthetic choice. She has spoken openly about her relationship with Marina Abramovich. Abramovich considers herself a mentor to Gaga, to Jay-Z, to some of the most commercially powerful artists of the last 30 years. What she teaches is not painting. In 1996, she performed spirit cooking, putting instructions onto a gallery wall using pig's blood. The instructions included directions for consuming mixtures involving blood and inflicting pain as spiritual practice. She has described it as a method for transforming matter into energy. Art critics call it provocative performance. The people she mentors call her a teacher. In 2015, a leaked email showed her inviting Tony Podesta and John Podesta, powerful political figures, to a spirit cooking dinner. This happened, it is documented. Strangely, the dinner was described as something that was to happen in Marina Abramovich's home, rather than in an art gallery. They have shown you the rituals in horror films. They have shown you the blood on gallery walls. They have shown you the table centerpieces made of heads. Every time, the explanation is the same word. Art. Maybe that's true. But art has always been the place where the powerful show you what they believe. The only question worth asking is whether belief ever stayed inside the frame, or whether it walked out the door with them. Before Hollywood existed, this belief did. This is the thing that gets lost in every conversation about celebrity blood rituals and vampire elites and occult symbolism in music videos. People treat this darkness like a modern invention, like something that crawled out of the internet in the early 2000s and attached itself to famous faces. It didn't. What you're looking at when you look at all of this is something ancient, continuous, and extraordinarily well documented. A thread that runs from the oldest human civilizations straight into the parties and film sets and gallery openings of the present day. Pull the thread. See where it leads. Every major civilization in recorded history placed blood at the center of its cosmology. Not as metaphor, as mechanism. The Aztec Empire performed blood sacrifice on a scale that remains staggering. Tens of thousands of lives per year, offered to sustain the sun itself. This wasn't primitive superstition. It was a sophisticated theological framework, maintained by priests and astronomers, in which blood was understood as the literal currency of cosmic renewal. Without it, the universe would stop, the sun would go dark. The logic was internally coherent. The belief was total. The Romans practiced blood rituals tied to military victory and agricultural fertility. Mystery cults, the Eleusinian mysteries, the Mithraic rites used blood as the central sacrament of initiation. What happened inside those rituals was never written down. Members were sworn to silence under penalty of death. What we know is that they continued for centuries, that membership included senators and emperors, and that the secrecy was the point. Elizabeth Bathory. Hungary, late 1500s. A countess of extraordinary wealth and status who killed over 600 young women. She believed their blood would preserve her youth. She bathed in it, she consumed it. She was not a legend. She was a historical person, tried by historical courts, whose crimes were documented by witnesses and recorded in official proceedings. The authorities who convicted her were so disturbed by what they found that they could not bring themselves to execute her. They bricked her into her own bedroom instead, left a slot for food. She survived 4 years inside the walls. Aleister Crowley, born 1875, called himself the Beast, founded the religious philosophy of Thelema, whose central text, the Book of the Law, was dictated to him, he claimed, by a supernatural entity in Cairo in 1904. His rituals, documented in texts that are publicly available, discuss blood as a vehicle for magical intention. He was not operating in a fringe. His Golden Dawn, the occult order he inhabited and eventually fractured, counted W.B. Yeats among its members. Its influence on Western culture is formally documented in literary scholarship. From Crowley, The thread runs to Jack Parsons, rocket scientist, JPL co-founder, Crowley devotee, who conducted ritual magic in the California desert in the 1940s, alongside a young L. Ron Hubbard. Hubbard would go on to found Scientology. Parsons would die in an explosion in his home laboratory. Crowley, informed of their activities, wrote that he was deeply concerned about what they were attempting. From Parsons. The thread runs to Kenneth Anger, filmmaker, Crowley scholar, the man who physically brought all of this into Hollywood. Anger was friends with Anton LaVey, Jimmy Page, and the Rolling Stones. He had a Manson family member score one of his films from a prison cell. He is the connective tissue between Victorian occultism and modern entertainment, the person who ensured that when Hollywood reached for dark imagery, the imagery it found had roots. And from Anger, the thread runs forward, into the music, into the films, into the parties, and the rituals, and the symbols on the red carpets that everyone sees, and nobody is supposed to name. In the 1960s, a splinter group formed in London, the Process Church of the Final Judgment. They worshipped both Christ and Satan simultaneously, believing the two were reconciled at the end of time. They established communes. They attracted followers in London, in New York, in LA, specifically in the years surrounding the Manson murders. What the Process Church understood, what all of these traditions understand, is that the most powerful rituals are the ones performed in plain sight, dressed as art, dressed as music, dressed as fashion, dressed as entertainment. The darkness that surfaces in Hollywood did not originate in Hollywood. It arrived there, carried by specific people, through documented relationships, across a lineage that stretches back centuries. Kenneth Anger didn't invent any of this. He just knew where the door was, and he left it open. We've talked about them long enough. Now let's talk about you. Every year, the global anti-aging industry generates $67 billion, not from the elite, not from the occult inner circles of Hollywood or Silicon Valley, or the guests at masked balls in French chateaux. From ordinary people, from people buying creams and serums and supplements and procedures that promise, in careful clinical language, exactly what Elizabeth Bathory promised herself in a castle in Hungary 400 years ago. More time, preserved youth. The feeling that the clock can be argued with. The $8,000 plasma clinics that operated legally in California until the FDA intervened were not serving celebrities. They were serving accountants and tech workers and retired professionals who had read the same Stanford research and drawn the same conclusion. That young blood does something, that if you can access it, you should. The belief is not fringe. The belief is a $67 billion industry with a loyalty card and a monthly subscription option. The difference between that and what the theorists describe is not belief. The belief is identical. The difference is price point and privacy. Here is what the conspiracy theorists are actually asking, buried underneath all the vampire imagery and the occult symbolism and the photographs of masked guests at Rothschild parties. They are asking, what are the people with unlimited money and total privacy doing with the same belief that you act on every morning when you open a jar of something that promises to turn back time? That's the question. It's not a crazy question. It's not even a particularly radical one. It is the oldest question that has ever existed between the powerful and everyone else. What do they know that we don't? What do they do that we can't? What does it cost them, and who pays it? There is a psychological term for what happens when we transfer our fears about death onto powerful figures. Terror management theory. The idea that human beings construct belief systems, religions, ideologies, conspiracy theories, primarily as a mechanism for managing the terror of their own mortality. We make the powerful into vampires, because vampires have solved the problem we cannot solve. They have beaten death, and if they've beaten it through something dark, through ritual, through blood, through a deal we don't fully understand, then at least there's a reason. At least the world makes sense. I get asked for proof constantly. On every video, in every comment section. And it's a fair question. Here's the honest answer. We don't have proof. And here's why we may never get it. In our culture, proof or confirmation requires two things: a serious investigation by law enforcement, or a mainstream media expose that cannot be ignored. But the people named in these accounts don't just move in powerful circles. They own them. They fund the politicians. They sit on the boards of the companies that own the newspapers. The institutions capable of producing proof have long been captured by the elite. So we watch, we document, we point at the faces that don't change, and the symbols hiding in plain sight, and the parties that nobody photographs. Maybe one day all this will end, but until then the ritual will continue, and horrors will be inflicted on the innocent.